During the summer of 216 BC, on the vast plains of southern Italy, an event transpired that would indelibly alter our perceptions of military strategy. A formidable force of 80,000 Roman soldiers, the most formidable military force ever gathered by the Republic, advanced with unwavering confidence toward its fate. These men embodied the might of Rome, its unwavering discipline, its meticulous organization, the unyielding strength that had seized land after land. They held a firm conviction in their own superiority, in the legion's stand unyielding, assured of their triumph. Yet, in just a matter of hours, this force would face complete destruction. Not through sheer might, nor through advanced armaments, but by something infinitely more destructive. A concept, a plan so exceptional, so flawlessly carried out, that even now, over 2 millennia later, it is examined in armed forces globally. This tale unfolds the saga of the Battle of Cannae and the enigmatic weapon that vanquished the mightiest legion that Rome had ever assembled. Captivating tales that delve into the realms of strategy and conflict. Strategic mastermind, join the channel and turn on notifications to ensure you never miss an update. In order to genuinely grasp the events of that pivotal day in August, we must journey back several years. It is essential for us to comprehend who the participants in this perilous game were, what drove them, and how they found themselves at that pivotal juncture in the past. In the 3rd century BC, Rome emerged as a formidable force. It had broadened its control across the Italian peninsula, achieved through a blend of military might, clever diplomacy, and remarkable capacity to integrate subjugated nations into its governance structure. The Roman legions were regarded as nearly unbeatable. Their organization surpassed all other military forces of the era. Segmented into groups for centuries, cohorts of Roman soldiers displayed unwavering iron discipline, a unity that turned countless individuals into a formidable force. Men united as one formidable force. Yet Rome was not solitary in the Mediterranean. On the northern coast of Africa, another formidable power emerged: Carthage. This, the Phoenician city-state, established a trading empire that extended throughout the western Mediterranean. Carthage held sway over vital sea lanes and boasted colonies on the Iberian Peninsula, abundant in silver and other resources, and had cultivated a navy that matched the might of any other during that era. For many years, Roman Carthage existed in harmony of fragile tranquility, with each party acknowledging the boundaries of the other's domain. However, as is frequently the case when two formidable nations coexisting in the same environment, discord was bound to arise. The initial conflict involving Rome. The conflict with Carthage erupted in 264 BC and endured for a harrowing 23 years. This conflict, the conflict recognized as the First Punic War, unfolded mainly on the seas and in Sicily. Rome, historically recognized as a land power, it found itself compelled to construct a navy from the ground up. And despite every obstacle, it successfully overcame Carthage in its own territory. The loss was a profound embarrassment for the Carthaginians. They had no choice but to incur a substantial indemnity, forfeit Sicily, and subsequently lose Sardinia and Corsica. Greater than they diminished their prestige, their reputation for being unbeatable on the ocean. However, in Carthage, the Barca family still remembered this defeat. There was one individual who stood out: Hannibal Barca. Hamilcar was among the most accomplished generals of Carthage in the First Punic War. He had always emerged victorious in combat, yet Carthage remained defeated in the conflict. The burden of humiliation pressed down on him. As noted by Roman historians, when his eldest son, at just 9 years old, Hamilcar led him to an altar, compelling the boy to pledge an everlasting enmity towards Rome. This young lad was referred to as Hannibal Barca. Hannibal led his family to the Iberian Peninsula, where he commenced the construction of a new empire for Carthage. He subdued nearby tribes and set up silver mines that would finance future forces and established a self-sufficient power structure. Upon Hamilcar's death in battle, his son-in-law took on the responsibility directive. Upon his assassination, the Carthaginian army in Iberia undertook an extraordinary action. Those individuals. Their choice fell upon Hamilcar's son, a mere 25 years of age, to lead them as their commander. Hannibal Barca was raised amidst the disciplined environment of military camps. He was fluent in multiple languages, grasped various cultures, and had acquired the strategies of conflict inherited from his father and forged in the crucible of the Iberian battlefields. Yet beyond that, he held something uncommon, a brilliant strategic mind, capable of perceiving the battlefield not as it existed, but as it might be. The Second Punic War commenced in 218 BC with Hannibal's assault the city of Saguntum, a steadfast ally of Rome. War was declared by Rome. The anticipation was the conflict was poised to unfold in Iberia and potentially extend to Africa, should Rome succeed in breaching Carthaginian lands. However, Hannibal envisioned a different course of action. In a bold and unprecedented military move, he chose to invade Italy, not by sea, where Rome had established its might, yet by land, along a path deemed unfeasible. He would lead his troops traversing Gaul and scaling the Alps. Picture the moment. Around 50,000 soldiers, comprising Iberian and African infantry, alongside the Numidian cavalry, renowned as the finest globally, presented a spectacle that Europe had never witnessed.
Awaits our return.
Observed in such quantities, 37 war elephants. These colossal beings would serve not merely as instruments of destruction, yet also as means of instilling fear in their adversaries. The trek through the Alps was nothing short of a nightmare. GIC communities assaulted the ranks of the Carthaginians. Men and animals fell victim to the merciless grip of snow and ice. Snow cascaded down, obliterating whole areas of the military. As Hannibal finally set foot on the Po Plain in northern Italy, he found himself with nearly half of his army gone. Yet he found himself in Italy. He had achieved what seemed unattainable. Rome stood in disbelief. Roman, the strategy, had been utterly undermined. Now the battle would unfold not in far-off lands, but in the very core from Italy. Hannibal wasted no time in pursuing his ultimate goal, to dismantle the Italian Confederacy. Rome reigned supreme. Italy achieved its goals not solely through military might, but also by weaving an intricate web of alliances. If Hannibal managed to sway the allies of Rome should they choose to change allegiances, the Republic would inevitably crumble from the inside. In order to achieve this, it was essential to demonstrate that Rome was not unbeatable. He had to conquer the legions time and again to shatter the myth of Roman dominance. And that is precisely what he started to undertake. During the conflict in 218 BC at the Trebia River, Hannibal confronted a Roman consular army and obliterated it. He executed a timeless ambush, enticing the legions to cross an icy river, subsequently launching an assault on their flanks with cavalry and concealed forces. Despite suffering significant losses, Rome dispatched fresh legions to the battlefield. The Romans failed to grasp that they were up against an extraordinary general. In the subsequent year, Hannibal advanced to the south via Etruria. The Roman consul Flaminius pursued him with his legions. resolved to stop the Carthaginian from inflicting more damage on Roman
On the dawn
lands.
of August 2nd,
Hannibal
216
meticulously
BC,
selected the site
Roman
of
army
conflict,
prepared for conflict.
Lake Trasimene.
Across the field,
On a misty dawn,
Hannibal
he
assembled
concealed
his
his
own
forces
army
within
in
the
a manner
hills
that
encircling
left
the
his
lake.
officers utterly
We
astonished.
lingered.
The collision of
As
foot
Flaminius
soldiers
led
at
his
the heart of
legions
the
through the
battlefield
constricted
was
lakeside
nothing short
passage,
of monumental.
Hannibal assailed from every direction at once.
The Carthaginian heavy cavalry
scene was one of
launched an
utter
assault
devastation.
on the Roman cavalry positioned on the left flank.
15,000 Romans perished.
Faster.
Among them
We must
was
reach
the
the gate
consul
before they
himself.
close.
Do you think they will let us in?
An
They will
additional
for the right
15,000 were
price. Now
taken
hurry.
captive. The military just has vanished
Rather
from
than
reality.
chasing after the escapees, he
Rome
directed
was
them to
engulfed in a
maneuver
wave of
behind
panic.
the full Roman army.
After many years, the city faced a
The
real
Allies,
and
now
pressing
launching
danger.
an assault from both
The upper
flanks,
chamber designated a
faced defeat
dictator,
as well.
Quintus Fabius Maximus, granting
The
him
Roman
total
infantry,
authority
robust
to navigate
and
the
formidable,
turmoil.
swiftly commenced
Fabius
their
put into
advance,
action a
driving
strategy
back the
that would come to be known as the
The
Fabian
weighty
strategy.
African infantry,
He turned away from
positioned slightly withdrawn on the
confrontation.
wings,
Hannibal engaged in
abruptly
fierce
pivoted
combat.
and launched an assault.
Rather, he trailed the
Hasdrubal,
Carthaginian army
after
from a
triumphing
secure
over
distance,
both wings of the Roman cavalry,
disrupting their supply
commenced an
lines,
assault on the
targeting
rear guard.
isolated groups, and severing their resources. A calculated approach,
86,000
a
Roman
strategy of
restricted
attrition
area.
crafted to wear down Hannibal while avoiding the peril of another catastrophe. And it was successful, at the very least, in part. Hannibal found himself in Italy, yet he remained alone and cut off. He did not receive any notable support from Carthage, which was grappling with its own challenges in Iberia and Africa. His companions in Italy were scant. He sought a resounding triumph, one so overwhelming that it would shatter the Roman resolve to persist. Conflict. Yet Fabius refused to grant him that chance. The months evolved into something greater, more than a year of strategic movements and counteractions without a conclusive confrontation. The issue lay in Fabius's approach. Although it proved effective in military terms, it lacked political sustainability. Rome stood as a formidable warrior republic. Its essence, the essence of identity, was forged through magnificent military triumphs. The concept of merely trailing the adversary without engaging in combat was perceived as timidity exhibited by numerous individuals. The Roman aristocrats sought fame and honor. They sought victories. Those individuals sought to vanquish Hannibal in a decisive confrontation
Rome, my
and
general.
demonstrate the dominance
Their
of the
legions
legions.
are broken, and
The approach
victory
known
awaits
as the
us.
Fabian strategy was referred to timid and unheroic. As Fabius's term as dictator came to a close, the pressure to shift strategy grew
But
immensely.
Rome would not yield.
During
Their
that year
spirit,
in 216
unwavering, rejected all
BC, two
pleas
new
for peace.
consuls were elected, Gaius Terentius
Rome,
Varro and
undaunted,
Lucius Aemilius
enlisted
Pus.
fresh legions.
Varro was a champion of the masses, a figure who vowed to deliver to Rome the triumphant win that was truly warranted. Pus was more prudent, a refined noble who had acquired knowledge from Fabius. Yet, even Pallas found themselves facing pressure. The Senate bestowed upon the consul something entirely unprecedented, the enormous force, 8 complete legions, each comprising
Rome,
around
ever
5,000
resilient,
soldiers,
began to broaden
along
its
with an
scope,
equal count
while
of Italic
Hannibal remained a
allies.
threat in Italy.
A total of
The war's
86,000
ultimate
men,
theater shifted
representing
as
the
Rome
largest
itself
military force,
invaded
the grandest
Africa.
gathering ever
Carthage,
witnessed
under
in Rome.
siege, The Roman army,
This army surpassed
86,000
anything Hannibal
strong,
could
prepared
confront.
for conflict.
The
Consul
reasoning
Varro,
was straightforward.
confident in number.
As they unable to outsmart
Across the
Hannibal,
field,
they
Hannibal
would
assembled his
overwhelm
army
him
in
with
an
their vast
unusual way.
numbers.
His seasoned
The two
African
consuls advanced southward toward Hannibal. In accordance with Roman tradition, the consuls took turns commanding the army on a daily basis. This configuration, which functioned effectively under typical conditions, would spell catastrophe when faced with a strategic mastermind such as Hannibal. Varro stood fierce, ready to engage in combat. Paulus moved with care, recalling the teachings of Trasimene. This allocation of authority would be taken advantage of, Hannibal, at that moment, was encamped close to the city of Cannae, in the Apulia region of the southern region of Italy. He successfully seized the Roman supply depot, granting him access to essential resources. Significantly, he had meticulously selected the landscape in which he intended to engage in battle. The terrain surrounding Ca was perfectly suited for cavalry maneuvers. In cavalry, Hannibal possessed a crucial edge over the Romans. He was aware that the Romans would arrive. They were compelled to arrive. The weight of political pressure, the relentless pursuit of glory, and the sheer magnitude of the army all exerted their influence. Rome approaches a pivotal confrontation. At the time of the confrontation, Hannibal commanded around 50,000 troops. The Romans possessed 86,000. The distinction was significant. In any face-to-face clash, side by side, Rome ought to have triumphed solely due to their numerical superiority. However, Hannibal had no intention of engaging in a direct confrontation. He was on the verge of utilizing an element that would fundamentally alter the dynamics of the game. Something the Romans had never encountered before on that magnitude. A tool crafted not from metal or wood, but from the intricacies of geometry and the depths of human psychology. As the days approached, in the midst of the conflict, there were clashes between the two forces. The palace, in its authority, maintained the army in a state of defense. On his appointed day, Varro charged forward with determination, aiming to incite Hannibal into combat. The soldiers of Rome exuded confidence. They surveyed their own ranks, counted 8 legions, acknowledged their allies, and beheld the mightiest army Rome had ever assembled, ever gathered, and were certain of their victory. How could they possibly fail? They were greater countless, more prepared, and they battled for Rome. On the eve of the confrontation, Powis allegedly attempted to persuade Varro to hold off until the terrain improves for a more strategic advantage. Yet Var was resolute in this. It was the day of his command, and he was poised to deliver victory to Rome. On the dawn of August 2nd, 216 BC, the Roman army prepared for conflict. The classic Roman formation positioned the heavy infantry at the core, structured into legions. The allies lingered on the periphery. The Roman cavalry, notably less formidable than their Carthaginian counterparts, found themselves positioned on the periphery. Flanks. Varro, aware of his advantage in infantry numbers, took an unexpected course of action. He focused the forefront and expanded the breadth of his legions. In a departure from the conventional formation, he assembled a formidable column of infantry in the core. The reasoning was evident. Employ sheer force and numerical superiority to decisively overwhelm the heart of Hannibal's forces by sheer strength. Across the field, Hannibal was assembling his own army in a manner that left his officers utterly astonished. He positioned his formidable African infantry on the flanks, maintaining a slight retreat. These were seasoned soldiers, battle-hardened veterans armed with weaponry and armor seized from the Romans in past triumphs. At the heart of his formation, he positioned his GIC alongside the Iberian infantry, not as seasoned and not as well prepared. In that moment, he performed an act of remarkable significance. Rather than adhering to a straight path, he shaped the center into a convex arc that jutted out toward the Romans. It appeared an exposed, fragile structure. The heavy cavalry of Carthage, commanded by Hasdrubal, positioned itself on the left flank. The Numidian cavalry, known for their lightness and agility, occupied the right flank. To any casual observer, Hannibal's formation appeared unusual, yet imperfect. The anticipated focal point appeared to beckon an assault, and that was exactly the intention. Hannibal was crafting a diversion. He was fully aware what the Romans might consider doing. He had immersed himself in the art of Roman combat. He was aware that they would move forward in a direct path, accompanied by their formidable heavy infantry. He understood they would attempt to shatter his fragile core, and he was relying on it. The two armies commenced their advance. The collision of foot soldiers at the heart of the battlefield was nothing short of monumental. Countless individuals clad in gleaming armor, warriors wielding swords and spears, clashed in a tumultuous frenzy of chaos. The sound must have been overwhelming. The resounding clash of steel meeting steel, the anguished cries of the injured, the directives called out by officers striving to uphold their formation. The Roman infantry, robust and formidable, swiftly commenced their advance, driving back the opposition. The heart of Carthage. Confronted by the formidable presence of numerous legions, the Gauls and Iberians commenced their withdrawal. However, this was not a disordered withdrawal. It was measured, intentional. The graceful curve was gradually taking on a concave shape. In the meantime, on the edges, a significant event was unfolding. The Carthaginian, the heavy cavalry commanded by Hasdrubal, launched an assault on the Roman cavalry positioned on the left flank. The disparity in quality was striking and harsh. The Roman cavalry, made up mainly of affluent citizens, engaged in battle more from obligation than ability, was swiftly defeated. A multitude abandoned the battleground. As a content management system then executed a move that would showcase his own strategic brilliance rather than chasing after the escapees, he maintained his cavalry in formation and directed them to maneuver behind the full Roman army to strike at the allied cavalry positioned on the opposite flank. The allies, now launching an assault from both flanks, faced defeat as well. The infantry battle raged on at the heart of the conflict. The Romans, they believed they were on the path to victory, or so they thought. The center of the Carthaginian forces persisted in its withdrawal. Hannibal's formation had now taken shape, shifted from an outwardly extending arc to an inwardly bending arc. The Romans, observing the foe's withdrawal, applied even more pressure. Additional legions advanced onward. The Roman formation, already tight, grew even more condensed. A multitude of men found themselves crammed into an increasingly confined area. The troops positioned in the rear lines propelled those ahead. It was increasingly challenging to lift their arms in defense. The space was so confined that the numerical superiority of the Romans was increasingly turning into a burden. Then arrived the pivotal moment. The weighty African. The infantry, positioned slightly withdrawn on the wings, abruptly pivoted 90 degrees and launched an assault on the vulnerable sides of the Roman legions, concurrently from both aspects. The Romans, having crowded into the center, were suddenly besieged from three paths. Yet the conclusion was still beyond reach. Hasdrubal, after triumphing over both the wings of the Roman cavalry, positioned his heavy cavalry behind the Roman lines and commenced an assault on the rear guard. The trap had been fully activated. 86,000 Romans, the soldiers found themselves ensnared in a relentlessly constricting area. Surrounded on all fronts, escape was not an option. There was no path to navigate. The sheer density of the Roman formations, which ought to have served as their strength, transformed into their demise. The men were unable to engage in battle effectively. They were unable to escape. Those individuals were pressed against one another so closely that when a man stumbled, he frequently found it impossible to touch the ground, upheld by the figures surrounding him. What ensued was not a conflict, but a gathering implementation. For hours, Hannibal's forces systematically slaughtered the Romans. Multitudes. Ancient chroniclers recount chilling episodes, men gasping beneath the burden of surrounding forms. Warriors thus, in a frantic bid for escape, they sought refuge beneath the earth, hoping to find solace in its depths. Crimson streams flowing through the vast expanse of the landscape. Several, the Romans battled fiercely, creating tight-knit circles of defiance until the very end. Some attempted to escape, yet the Carthaginian cavalry was present to chase them down. Many perished right where they fell, incapable of pursuing any other endeavors. The consul Powis met his end in battle, steadfastly refusing to abandon the field as long as his legion remained engaged. Was present. Varro, the other consul, succeeded in fleeing alongside a handful of horsemen. Among the on that fateful day, 86,000 Roman soldiers took to the battlefield, with approximately 55,000 engaging in the fight. Has always remained. 10,000 were taken captive. Merely around 20,000 succeeded in their escape. It was the most significant military defeat Rome ever faced, marking the greatest catastrophe in the annals of Roman history. The defeats faced by Hannibal, around 6,000 men, primarily Gauls and Iberians from the central regions, who had withstood the first assault from the Romans. It was nearly inconceivable. A force of 50,000 had vanquished a contingent of 86,000. The force that enabled this wasn't a hidden piece of technology. It was not an extraordinary kind of blade or protective gear. It was an experience that transcended mere devastation. It was a double envelopment, the tactic now referred to as the pincer movement of Ca. Hannibal had employed the Romans' own hostility directed towards them. He had transformed their numerical advantage into a vulnerability. A scenario had been crafted by him. As the Romans advanced, their vulnerabilities only grew more pronounced. Every Roman soldier who moved toward the center was truly contributing to his own entrapment. It stood as a remarkable example of military geometry, of psychology, of utterly brilliant in strategy. The news of the defeat swept through Rome, igniting a wave of sheer panic. An emergency session of the Senate was convened. There was a strong belief that Hannibal would advance on Rome and bring ruin to the city. In ancient Rome, women faced prohibitions against publicly grieving their losses due to the overwhelming number of deceased could significantly jeopardize the city's spirit. Almost every esteemed Roman family had suffered a loss at Cannae. 70 senators fell on the battlefield, a disaster unfolded that surpassed anything Rome had ever known. Yet, an extraordinary event unfolded. Hannibal did not advance on Rome. His officers implored him to take that action. Hannibal, accompanied by his cavalry, the commander, it is said, remarked, "You understand the art of winning, Hannibal, yet you lack the wisdom to wield victory." Yet Hannibal possessed knowledge that eluded his officers. He possessed no siege apparatus. Rome was strongly fortified. Moreover, his strategic aim was not to seize Rome, but to dismantle the slanted alliance. To achieve this, he required the support of Rome's allies to change their allegiance. Indeed, a few took that path. Capua, the second largest city in Italy, allied with Hannibal. A number of southern cities performed admirably too, yet it fell short. The majority of Rome's allies, taken aback by the magnitude of the loss, stayed true. In its bleakest moment, Rome revealed the essence of its greatness. The Senate declined to entertain tranquility. The decision was made to not pay the ransom for the prisoners. It outright declined to engage in any negotiations. Instead, it promptly set about gathering new forces. Rome possessed a resource that Hannibal lacked, an almost limitless supply of workforce. For each legion that fell, Rome had the capacity to summon another. The events that ensued. It was a period marked by relentless and exhausting conflict. Hannibal lingered in Italy for a span of 15 years following Cannae, yet he was never able to achieve that commanding triumph. Rome returned to a strategy of attrition, steering clear of direct confrontations and engaging in harassment tactics. The Carthaginian supply lines are gradually reclaiming lost territory. And then Rome took action, an extraordinary idea. It unveiled fresh avenues. Armies were dispatched into Iberia to sever Hannibal's power base in that region. It invaded Africa, compelling Carthage to summon Hannibal back to protect his native land. During the conflict at Zama in the year 220, in the annals of history, Hannibal would ultimately meet his match in Scipio Africanus, a Roman general who had meticulously analyzed Canaan's strategies and gleaned insights from them. Yet, the legacy of Ka extended far beyond that particular conflict. The conflict emerged as the definitive example of the encompassing tactic. An exemplary demonstration of how exceptional strategies can prevail quantitative dominance. For more than 2 millennia, military leaders have examined the intricacies of cannons, examined it closely. During World War II, the Germans sought to implement it on a grand scale through their blitzkrieg strategies. Modern militaries still impart the principles of Khan. A flexible center is employed to absorb the enemy's attack, the ideal execution of flank maneuvers, the significance of elite cavalry or agile forces, and the utilization of the psychological tendencies of the adversary. Hannibal's brilliance at Cannae stemmed from his grasp of not just the tangible, the arena of conflict, yet also the struggle within the mind. He recognized that the Romans, assured in their numbers' dominance, would forcefully advance his position. He realized that he could channel this aggression to forge the strategic scenario he sought. He transformed the adversary's strengths into vulnerabilities. Their lesser troops positioned at the center turned into a benefit, as they were able to withdraw with agility, unlike the Roman heavy infantry, which lacked such flexibility. Roman numerals' superiority turned into a burden when all these men were confined to a space where they could not engage in battle effectively. Yet, within the narrative of Cannae lies a deep irony. Even after crafting one of the most flawless tactical throughout history, there have been many victories, yet Hannibal ultimately faced defeat in the war. Wars are not determined merely by exceptional strategies in isolated confrontations. Victories are achieved through a combination of sustained strategy, ample resources, strong political resolve, and effective diplomacy. Rome possessed all of these. Carthage, even with the most brilliant military strategist of the time, fell short. Rome might withstand the absence of 80,000 men and persist in the battle. Carthage was unable to supply Hannibal with the tools he required to capitalize on his triumphs. The true takeaway from Cannae isn't merely concerning tactical envelopment. The distinction lies between achieving a tactical victory and securing a strategic victory. It is concerning how a single side may triumph in every confrontation, yet ultimately face defeat in the overarching conflict. It speaks to the strength of a nation, highlighting its capacity to endure the harshest trials and continue to persevere. Rome endured the loss of 70,000 men in just one day, and not only persevered, but ultimately triumphed in the conflict and established itself as the preeminent force in the Mediterranean for the ensuing 6 centuries. In reflection throughout the ages, Cannae remains a shining example of what can be achieved when strategic brilliance aligns with the ideal. Instant. However, It serves as a reminder that even the most flawless triumph can be inadequate without the broader strategy.